This next guest, same as most people, I met him in a mastermind, at a fishing mastermind probably 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Awesome guy, just a good old country boy from Mississippi. He's one of those guys that when you meet him, you just can't help but to like him. He's the guy he's swinging for the fence. He's actually a principal locally in Carencro here.
Used to be.
Was a principal.
Used to be, yeah.
Was an educator in the public school system turned professional real estate investor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I want him to tell your story to these guys about how you went from working in education, you kind of telling your story outside how you working a lot of hours. When you're a principal, you got to be at every event. You weren't with your family that much, and you transferred from doing that into getting into real estate and how that happened and kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of what that looks like.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the invite. I grew up in Tallahassee, Florida. That's where my parents still stay. I'm a Florida State grad. I'm a Seminole. I'm a Seminole from the Bobby Bowden era. Okay, I can't claim these days. Hey, look. Okay. But probably like a lot of people, my parents were like first-time college grads. So they kind of looked at the world like that's how they made it out of a difficult situation. My dad played college football. That was his scholarship. My mom was a band person. That's how she made it through. That's how they got to college. So what do they tell their kids? Go to school, listen to the teachers, don't get called because, back then they beat our butts. I know that. You can't say that. Can you still say that? That's what we got. Yeah. Okay. Get good grades, because if you get good grades, you can get a good job. You get a good job, you can make good money, right? So I listened to that and did pretty good through school, got a scholarship to go to college, went to college and got a job as a teacher. Why? Well, teachers get summers off. Y'all heard that? Holidays off. And teachers will never get fired. Like, that's not a thing, right? Like, you always need teachers. Followed those instructions, ended up doing pretty well. Somebody said, hey, you're such a good teacher. Why don't you go back to school? You be a good principal. What they don't tell you is when you got to go back to school. Okay, you got to take more student loans out. And you're probably, if you're not paying for it, you're probably making less as a principal. Because your principal now has to go from working 40 hours and going home, not caring, right? Your teacher working 40 hours, going home. Now your principal's there after school if the parent doesn't come and pick the kid up on time. Your principal's there early because teachers call out, right? Your principal's at all the games, at all the sports, writing the checks to the referees, like somebody has to do that. So that was me over here at Carencro High. Like we were a part of the group that hired Kevin Falk. Like he came in when I was there. So he's a good friend of mine, good guy in this area. Huh? He's not loaning me any money, but that's because I'm not using my phone like I should. But no, I would say I followed kind of like the path that was laid out for me, like go to school, get a good job, get more education. It'll mean more money. Okay. Problem with that is I found myself with a doctorate degree, like working at Ole Miss as a professor. And at the end of every month, I was still basically broke. Like, because as your lifestyle creeps up, you just buy more stuff and you don't have anything. So ended up getting into real estate, meeting a guy at my church who was in the real estate. He still doesn't believe to this day that we grew how we grew, but ended up with a church member telling me, hey, this is what I'm doing to retire. He had about 30 homes that he had paid off and he was still working his full-time job. And when I saw the spreadsheet, I was like, well, maybe I should look into this. And then you start looking into it and you find YouTube, which YouTube wasn't, I feel like I'm old and like YouTube wasn't as big as it is now, right? So I was listening to like podcasts like Clayton Morris, Rod Cleef, those guys online. What else did I listen to back then? Y'all heard of Dave Ramsey? Yeah. Like he helped you get your budget in order, your
personal life.
Man, my wife almost divorced me over those weekly meetings. We got to have the envelopes, but it starts to train you just to be like disciplined with your money, and that is something that came out of that. But anyways, did my first deal kind of by accident. When you don't have any money, people say, "Did you start from anything?" I started from nothing. So what nothing is not money. Like people say you start from nothing. Nothing is not money. Nothing is a poor mindset that's been trained to like depend on other people. So this is how low I was in a mindset. In 10 years in education, as a teacher, assistant principal, principal of a school, professor at a college, I never told a student that they could own their own business. Never. Now imagine how poor that is, right? My mind was go to school, get a good grades, and get a good job. That's all I ever told them. And the kids who were the entrepreneurs, guess what they were? They were the bad kids. They were the troublemakers. They were the kids that we kick out. They were the kids that wouldn't sit in the rows, non-compliant. It's happening right here in your schools. I'm just telling you because I was that guy.
The non-conformist.
Yeah, and guess
this on video. I'm gonna need that.
Hey, and guess who the teachers send to us? They send to us the entrepreneurs. Like that's who they're sending. How do I know? Because now on my Facebook, those kids are running trucking businesses and running real estate companies, running companies, and we were kicking them out of school. I'm just telling y'all. Like that's really what happens. But nevertheless, when you don't have any money, you don't have a mindset, but you have a will, there is a way. So what I learned is that you could buy real estate without actually having any money. It's called seller financing. And I learned you could do it the buy and hold way, right? Didn't learn the steps the right way, right? I just knew, hey, you could buy with no money, just ask the seller to finance. So that's how I started. I started by going on Zillow.com, sorting for sale by owners. And I would just text them because you can get the number right there. If you find for sale by owners on Zillow, you still can today. And I just texted them, hey, I want to buy your house, but I don't have any money. Will you sell it? Will you owner finance? I did that hundreds of times. Just from my personal cell phone, no systems, nothing like that.
Is this while you're being a principal?
This is while I'm working. Yeah, I didn't quit until I had a bunch of rentals. So
This is while you're a principal or a professor?
Both. While I was a principal, I did a lot of bad prospecting because I would get people to tell me, come look, and then I couldn't because I had a job. It was just too busy. But once I got to be the professor, it's kind of a perky situation. I had 2 classes. I had to work from 6 to 9 in the evening because all of my students come to evening class. And during the day, like nobody was watching me. Like nobody was asking me to clock in or clock out. That's a big difference from being a principal at the school where your time is like everybody's watching. You can't barely eat, right? But yeah, I would text these for sale by owners on Zillow and ask them if they would seller finance. And I mean, it must have been hundreds of people before one guy told me, yeah, I'll do that. And he started a conversation with me. That guy's still one of my like long-term investors now. But he kind of like made me believe in the process because he said, I'll own a finance. And he said, go look at it. He lived in Alabama. This house is in Tupelo, Mississippi. That's where a lot of my properties are. And I went and looked at the house, didn't know anything. Like, I really didn't know anything. I didn't know how much it was going to cost to rehab it. I just knew he said he would seller finance it to me. My wife went with me. We went and looked. So we were planning who's going to paint the walls, who's going to do everything. Because we knew nobody could live in it like that, right? He ended up like not screwing me over because I think I could have got screwed over because I really didn't know anything. Didn't get an education, didn't have a real mentor on that property. But we ended up getting that deal done. I think $1,500 down, I think is what that deal cost me. Bought it for $82K, swiped a credit card to do all the rehab and then did it all myself.
Where was this at?
This is Tupelo, Mississippi. And cool story. 7 years later of renting that property out for 7 years, we sold that house for like $225. Wow. Right? 7 years. And like I said, that guy, Mark, has become one of my best investors. I didn't know it at the time, but I was raising money, right? I was raising money from somebody that wasn't a bank. He loaned me $82K to buy his house, right? That's seller finance. It's kind of like raising private money. Yep. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was like courting a private lender because before he signed the paperwork, he came to meet me from Alabama. What did I do when he came and met me? I cleaned out my car, vacuumed it, made sure it was smelling good, told my wife to come because she's the nice one, right? All of that to court him. And we ended up, maintaining a relationship after that. Even to this day, we maintain a relationship. So that ended up being one of my first deals. My next deal is kind of the deal that got me hooked, though, on this whole process, and it also got me in a lot of trouble. So we'll talk about that. But my next deal Ended up buying a house for $15K. Okay. That sounds amazing, right? But it's everything you would imagine a house for $15K is. Okay. At the time though, I'm thinking this is what I can get into. And I didn't have $15K then. Like I literally had a fellow business owner swipe my credit card and give me $15K. It's the first time I ever had $15K in my life, like in my bank account. And remember, I had a PhD. First time I ever seen 15 grand in my bank account. You know, I had student loans, but you know, they put that 4,000 in there and then you buy spree wells and rims and all the stuff. That's where the money's going, by the way. That's why we should have to pay it back. Just telling y'all. But anyways, that next deal, got the 15K, bought that property, and it was a disaster. Like just the whole process. But my memories from that deal are like my wife and I fixing it up together, my kids helping me paint, going to Lowe's and realizing that all contractors are not honest, but having to get contractors and pay them to help me fix up properties. Because when you don't know how to do anything, that's what you do, right? You go find them. You say, hey, I'll give you, at that time it was, see, I'm old, right? It's like, I'm giving you $80 to come help me for the day in the house. You can't even get nobody to get up for $80 now. But I'll give you $80 and you come show me how to pull this tub out and put it back or lay this vinyl on the countertops. But I did that deal. And then my church member's banker came over to look at the house once we got it rentable. It wasn't a good flip. It was just, we feel this is something presentable. The banker came over and looked at the house. I've got about 35 in it. And he said, well, I'll loan you 65, or I think it might have been 58, 65. Anybody do the math? Like I'm in it for 35. He'll give me a loan for 65. Okay. First time I ever had $15,000 in my bank account was just like 6 months prior. And now I'm going to have a check for 30,000. It was like light bulbs. Yeah. So I asked him, how many times can I do this? And he was like, how many of these can you bring me? Now, I think like most people, they don't really, like when you're a go-getter, you're a hustler, they don't think you're going to do what I did. But I said, okay. And I just started making offers on everything. Like I started making offers on everything that I could get for 50% off or cheap. I was the guy that realtors hate that's lowballing you on everything. Like I just sent out mass offers. Like, hey, will you sell it to me for 10K? She has some of these people. That was me, right?
I'm one of those people.
Okay, good. You should be. But, you know, we ended up buying a bunch of deals and I ended up figuring out, okay, well, you can buy 5 houses at a time, right? Or you can buy 15 houses at a time. Like the number didn't matter. And just as long as I would bring the bank these properties that were fixed up, they would loan me the money back. This is that whole BRRRR strategy. So I think, you know, at the height of 2021 or 2022, I think people would ask us, like, how many units do you have? And I never knew because we were just buying so fast and the bank was just lending it back to you. And you knew you had equity because I was renovating the properties and making them worth more. But I think I got up to like 25, 30 million in borrowed money, 500 plus rental units. And then the interest rates went from about 4.25 to 8.25 in 5 months. Okay. So let's just do the math on what that really is, right? If you borrow $25 million and you've got $130,000 in payments and the interest rate doubles in 6 months, now you got $260,000 in payment. That's rough math. But that was game changing because now you're going to see if you're actually making money, where your rental is actually cash flowing. Before, you know, I was making videos on Facebook and social media posts, you know, hey, why don't you buy 100 units and after all expenses, make $200 a door. That's how I met Richard. Did that talk and we were talking about making $200 a door and you're going to be making $50,000 a month if you got, it's not realistic. It's not the real world.
Yeah.
But you know, something I'm glad I did is I did take massive action.
Yeah.
Right. Massive action is a positive thing. It changed my family's life. You know, I've had an amazing 7 years. My kids have gone to Mexico with me. I took my whole family, my parents, my wife's parents to Ghana. Right. We never would have been able to do any of that without this business because I was teaching and $3,000 was a lot of money. But now I'm in that kind of stage where I'm having to go back and fix it because I didn't do it in the right order, right? So now we need a cash flowing business, right, that actually makes money instead of looking at the rentals like that's the cash flowing business.
Yeah.
The rentals are not the cash flowing business. And anybody who tells you that they're making money from rental properties when they're leveraging them at 75 or 80% is selling you something.
Selling you a dream.
And what I just told you will get you crucified if you go into gurus' things, and because they're selling courses. That's how they make their money, is to tell you to buy and hold a rental. Read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, because he says hold assets. They are not assets if you do not have peace.
There you go.
They're not assets. You know, I can tell you about somebody who has, you know, $300,000-$400,000 coming in every month, but after taxes and insurance and maintenance and repairs and the banks, right? That is not peace. Okay. Now, obviously, there's a lot you can do when you have a lot of assets, right? I probably have sold $7 million worth of property this year.
Yep.
We kind of trade pictures of texts.
Yeah, he texted me.
We trade pictures of.
What was it? It was a $600,000-700,000.
Yeah, like that's kind
I-
of cool, man.
I posted a check on.
Almost got a
that
deal.
I made I don't know $550,000 on a mobile home park I sold maybe 30 days ago. He inboxed it. I'd do that too.
Yeah.
But it was a check for like $650,000-700,000.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a beautiful business.
Yeah.
But there's an order to it, and there's a right way to do it, and that's how Chris and I have connected. Just because what he's saying is the truth. You've got to have your fast money, especially if you go full time in it. Some people are making, good money. That's their fast money, right? If you got a high earning W-2, I hate hearing it when these sales guys are like, "Oh, I'm making $200K a year, but I want to quit my job and get into real estate." You have no idea.
That's right.
What we do. Like, we don't get to not do deals.
Yeah.
A real estate investor that's not doing deals and it's their full-time job, like, maybe they've paid the properties off, but they don't look like us. Like, they're wrinkly. Okay, let's say that. They need to have been doing it a long time to get to that stage. But today, the types of deals I like to do, I still hold a bunch of rentals in Mississippi, but I flip a lot. So most of the deals I do now, I'm a marketer is what I like to think about it now. Like, I look for good deals. So if I find a bargain, I'm going to wholesale every single deal. Okay. Chris might have gave me this idea, but I wholesale every deal. I wholesale the deal either to myself, so that's my fast money, or I wholesale the deal to somebody else. And now I know, okay, I need to do a certain number of deals every month to have an active income. Okay. So that's how I like to think. So I look for good bargains.
Like, what do you set that standard at every month?
That's my number. I need $50K a month, but that might not be other people's number. Yeah. But you might say if my minimum deal size is $10K, then I need to do 5, or my minimum deal is $5K, then I need to do 10. That might be the right way. But I have to think about it that way. If I could go back and do it differently, how I would tell people to do it now, I would wholesale every deal to myself. That's the fast money. I would flip as many as possible until you have cash. I would flip. Okay. Now, Chris will say maybe you flip 3, keep 1, something combination.
Yeah.
But I just think you operate from a place of peace when you have cash, and you're buying the rentals as assets.
Okay, you just said something really.
You
heard what he just said? You heard what you speaking the gospel here. You speaking.
Well, I mean, wisdom comes when you mess up, right? Or when you go through pain and stress and struggle. Like, I have a great family, married, 2 kids, been married for 19 years. I got married at 19 years old. So I got a real one, and she's a Louisiana girl. She stuck with me. But that's the only way I got through the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
last 2 years were tough.
Yeah.
It strained. If you were a full-time operator, it strained your life. I mean, Patty, we know that. We had a lot of hard conversations. Hey, what are we going to sell?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What you want to sell first, because we're running out of money.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened the last 2 years.
And when you're a lot of us guys, like we have a bunch of guys in the room, our identity is in our work, right? Our ego is in our work. Our pride is in our work. So I'm going around speaking to people saying I got 500 units. So what don't I want to do? I don't want to go backwards.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to sell because now you got to go around and say, well, I got 300 units. Today I think it's 300 or something, and I just told I'm selling more. Like we're gonna sell down.
But you said something. Cash gives you peace.
Cash gives you peace.
And I think there's a balance. I think everything should be balanced in life. You got to have an equal balance of liquidity and an equal balance of balance sheet equity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you overbalanced on cash, then you're not building wealth, and inflation's eating you up, and you're getting eaten up on taxes. But then likewise, the opposite. You said you're talking about you overbalance on equity, then when the market pulls back, then you have no peace. You're stressed out because you can't fill the void in the gap of that cash. So there's nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong with selling right now, especially if you got a bunch of equity in your properties.
And that's why you make your money when you buy.
Yeah.
That's why you buy direct to seller. Because if I was the guy going out there and just going on pro forma, realtors telling me what stuff is worth, no offense. If I was doing that, there's no way I would have been able to get out. Or, you wouldn't have any equity to sell. So you definitely want to buy low, right? I hate to say like buy cheap, because you don't want to buy that $15,000 house that's like it was a war zone type situation. But you want to buy things that like every deal I heard up here today, like you could instantly wholesale it to somebody else, flip it immediately, like you have that immediate equity. That's what we really want.
Yeah. That's your default safety net, is buying right, like I talked about earlier in my presentation, and being the source of the deal. You had something to say?
Yeah, you said a keynote for a lot of us beginners earlier on how to get that cash.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about flipping.
Wholesale to yourself as a flipper.
You were talking about wholesaling to flip and then take the cash from the flips and build that up to you.
Right. So what Chris teaches, that's what you should do. But I just told you what I do.
Yeah, no.
So like, let's say I find a deal and it's like this month, we've got a deal. We're buying it for $32,000. This is Tupelo, Mississippi, so it's a different market. But we're buying it for $32,000. Okay. I'm actually going to flip the deal, but I'm going to wholesale it for $37,000. So I'm going to buy it for $32,000, wholesale it to myself for $5,000. My actual purchase price for my holding company is $37,000.
He's doing like instant cash out refi.
Instant cash.
Refi to himself. Yeah.
Yeah, the 3%, the acquisition fee.
And that's a really sharp way to do it. I've done that before, and it's a way to, like you said, wholesale it back to himself, take a few chips off the table of liquidity, but still hold it.
Yeah.
That's the best of both worlds. I like
So
that.
you got two different LLCs doing it?
Absolutely.
Well,
And you
why
got
do it that
Absolutely.
way? Why not just take it out of the renovation money?
So
Because that's what I said I was doing before. Right? So mentally, that's what I said I was doing before, right?
Yeah.
In reality, that's not always what happens, right? We say, well, we could just take it out of a project management, out of the renovation, but that's not always how it happens. So now I know we pay the marketing company whatever the HUD says, right? So the HUD says $5K, that's what the marketing company gets. So it forces you, it's kind of like profit first.
You could always maybe a contractor's fee.
You could
Yeah,
put
that's
it
what I'm
on there as
thinking,
whatever you want.
Yeah.
Acquisition
the way
fee,
that
wholesale fee.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with like accounting nightmare crap right now. So if
Yeah.
I do that, then now I've got a bunch of different companies, more accounting. Like I'm just.
And that's why I say you have to do what makes sense for you. It was harder for me to kind of, because I'm not a super organized person, right? So it was harder for me to, but it's not on me. Like it's on transaction coordinator. Hey, this is how we do it now.
Gotcha.
So every agreement that we put out is, Marketing Works LLC. That's who signs the contract, but they assign everything to either Grab the Map, which is the name of my company, or to whoever the other end buyer
Can you
is.
take us through the rest of the deal though? So you bought it for 32, you paid yourself 5, now what are you doing the rest of the way?
Yeah, so it needs about 25 in renovation, and then we're gonna flip it. We've got comps for 160, 165. So it's a flip, right? I'm taking that cash because I need it to survive, and that's how we like to do deals right now. Another deal this.
5 is your marketing company that's just gonna pay you to find more deals.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
Yep.
That's slick.
So
Yep.
if you get heavy into the flipping, what are you gonna do to offset your taxes?
I have 300 plus rental units.
Yeah, he's buying all kind of units too.
You know, the thing about it, when you have rentals, when you have rentals, you have so many expenses. You know, I don't want to scare anybody off, but cash flow is imaginary. Okay, you could write things off forever. Property taxes, maintenance, insurance. Right now is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Shoot, you could pay somebody as a consultant in your rentals, whatever you needed for expenses. It's the beautiful part about, that's one of the great profit centers of rental properties, is you pretty much, if you find a real estate CPA, you should not be paying taxes once you get to a certain level.
That's right.
Right now, don't want to hold anymore. So I will flip it or I will wholesale it right now. I guess I would.
Because you have enough properties to offset everything else, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I don't really need to hold anything. I need cash.
Yeah.
So for the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be flipping as much as possible. And that doesn't mean that something won't come along that we won't hold.
You're just going to be more selective.
I mean, you're
Yeah.
300 houses. I get it.
I mean, if I would have flipped and not be holding anything right now, I would have had a serious tax problem, but I would have had rentals that I could have purchased at much lower leverage and would have never run into cash flow issues.
He's after that P word again.
Yeah. I'm after peace. Yeah. You know what I was after before this though? Door count.
Yeah.
I got addicted to revenue going up every month. That's when I quit my job because I was like, wait, at the end of every month, after taxes and everything, they put a check for $3,800 in my account. But I can just buy more rentals and I can increase my monthly income every month by 5-10 grand. So I got addicted to that, like and I'm still addicted to that. I still like that.
Yeah.
Because we've started all kind of businesses outside of the real estate to make this work. Like we have a construction company now. Like we do the wholesaling. And I mean, what's crazy? I'll tell this story. So in the last 20 months, I've sold probably $7 to $10 million in real estate. Okay. My rental income, you would think, would have dropped. But this year, I'll make more rent this year with less properties. Why?
You got rid of the properties that weren't producing.
We're
as
getting
well.
rid of non-producers, but
Yeah.
we're also doing rent increases, and rent has gone up just that much. So when you increase your rent by $200 a door and your 300 doors, over 60,000 times 12 months, that's $720,000 more money.
Yeah.
So I was like, why isn't my rent going down and we're selling? It's because the market is helping us right now with the inflation and the rentals.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. It's like,
Yeah.
we're still making money.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
lessons learned, you're reflecting, and I'm taking a lot of good stuff from this too, is because I think we all go through the same struggle. If you do real estate for long enough, most people start off the way we did. We buy a bunch of rentals thinking that we could just sail off into the sunset, and we end up hitting a wall and then backing up and like, okay, reflecting, what did I do wrong here? Have you had the realization, hey, I just need to stay more balanced on liquidity versus equity?
Oh, 100%. I would say like equity is beautiful when you have cash. But
equity is beautiful
when you have cash. But it's totally imaginary when you don't.
Yes.
Because when you need the equity, it's too late. I would say in the last 18 months, I lost at least $1 million having to sell because I had to sell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you run an operation where you've got 25 employees, right, they have to get paid, right? You don't want your name running in the paper because you didn't pay your people. So if you get in a bind where you see, okay, 30 days from now, I'm not going to be able to make payroll, like it doesn't matter that on paper this house is worth 150. Like the person that's offering you 100 gets that house today, right? So you become the motivated seller.
Yeah.
I've become the motivated seller in a lot of situations. I just told you. I mean, today I sold 2. Just let them go. End of the year, like let them go.
Totally okay. There's
Yeah.
a time and place to become
It's the time and place to become
Yeah.
that. It solves headaches. My team, you know what my team told me this morning on the huddle when I told them those properties on the contract? Yes.
that. Yeah.
You know what? They don't want to deal with them either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so it makes you a better investor, makes you wiser.
Yes.
But yeah, I would say the craziest thing is like your bankers when you don't need the money, they're calling you. Hey, are you buying anything?
Yeah.
Hey, I saw you just did a deal with this other bank. Why aren't you doing deals with me? Right? Like, bring me a deal. And then when you're calling them saying, hey, like, I got to make payroll in 30 days, they're like, oh, wait, red flag. Like, why don't you have enough money to make payroll? You can't get the money when you need it.
That's right.
And so that equity on paper, I like to say it's imaginary. Now, when you have cash, it's a beautiful
That's
thing.
real.
Yeah, cash is real.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful thing.
I think for a long time, we had so much inflation, and I think it was true for a while that cash was trash. But we're out of that cycle now.
Oh, yeah.
Cash is king again.
Oh, yeah.
You really think? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're in a cycle now that cash is king. I mean, you look at all the real estate investors, they hurt. Most people, but we need cash.
The real estate investors who have cash, you could tell. You could tell it when you meet them on face. You could tell their peace. The real estate investors who have rentals, you can tell. Just talk to them long enough, you can tell. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff going on, and I think we're having a real conversation because that's what people really need to hear.
That's right.
But I don't want to discount, like, real estate has changed my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I still manage sums of money and have opportunity I never would have had if I hadn't gotten this space. So you just kind of go into it like.
You take the good with the
The
bad.
good with the bad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you soldier through. I mean, this is my third or fourth cycle I've went through since I've started as an entrepreneur. When things are really bad, guess what? They're going to be good again. And when things are really, really good, guess what? You better prepare. It's going to get bad again. And every cycle I've went through, I've gotten smarter, more dialed in. So, this, just like you said, this is all wisdom.
You know how to know that the cycle repeats itself, right? Because the people I'm selling properties to right now are buying them for prices I would never buy them for.
Yep.
So what does that tell you? They're coming back.
Yep.
Like, they don't know what I know. They don't know what he's telling you. Buy low.
Yep.
They don't know to tell you, like, buy with equity. So they're buying bad deals.
Yep.
I'm not supposed to tell them that. I mean, I will sometimes.
Yeah.
I'll be like, how are you going to make money on this?
Yeah.
But those are the ones I like.
It's their turn in the cycle to cut their teeth.
But if they don't have their fast money straight and they don't have the medium money, if they don't have cash, those properties are going to be coming back.
Yep.
Can I ask how you structure your debt? Do you have 237 mortgage payments, or do you have portfolios like of 50 houses, one mortgage, or like how is your debt set up?
So I would say all of those answers are probably true. There's some individual, there's some portfolios.
So you're talking about like lack of equity or cash or whatnot. I would assume that if you put some of the debt on 200 units and then you had a line of credit on 50 units or whatever, you could have a couple $1 million of safety blanket income to be at peace. No.
So to be clear, like, I'm in a great cash position right now. My business operates well.
Before when you're saying that you need cash.
I would say, to make that assumption, you assume, like, what I just said. Like, when times are good, you can get the money. When times are bad, can I just be real?
Absolutely.
Let me tell you what really happened, okay? Y'all remember the news where you had a couple of banks that started to go under. It was like, this was 2022. The rate started going up and you had a couple banks fail, okay, right away. I had a small community bank that I had borrowed $4 million from. I borrowed $4 million from them at 3.85%, okay? You know what they did? They're a small bank. They called me. And they said, we need $400,000 in 30 days, okay? Now, why do they do? They're in trouble.
Yeah.
Right? So they're calling their customers with where they think you have the money, and they're calling those notes. Okay? Well, I couldn't come up with that. I couldn't come up with $400,000 in 30 days, so I didn't want to. Didn't want to work on that. I had great rate. I was like, man, they can't force me to do this. Well, what happens in that case is that banker's calling your other bankers. Hey, did you know he couldn't come up with this? So now you're trying to go get the money from lenders, but they're starting to hear, hey, he might be in trouble.
Really?
Right? This is how small banks work. So all of y'all working at these small banks, well, this is how the world works. When you hear that when people hear that blood's in the water, they started like swarming. So sharks come. What are the investors now doing? Investors are calling saying, hey, do you have a property you'll sell me? And instead of them offering you retail, what are they doing? They want to see how bad you're hurting.
So what did you do in that circumstance?
We figured it out.
Did they?
Oh, I had to come up with $400,000.
Came up with it?
Yeah, it was a significant part of my portfolio. So I had to come up with the money. Yeah, I saved those properties. I've never lost any properties. Never got that bad. But you do what investors do. We figured it out.
Yep. Yep.
20% equity in 300 or 500 properties, though. You couldn't just restructure the debt and put more of the debt on, some properties.
So Chris might have to answer this because I'm just a blunt person. 20% equity is imaginary when times are tough. Let me tell you where that 20% equity goes. Okay, automatically 20% goes away because every investor in town is going to offer you 70% minus ARV, right?
Yep.
So where are you getting the 20% equity from?
You're a seasoned investor, and like Chris said, seasoned investors sell on market to retail clientele, so you're getting the full 100%.
Right. So you can't sell for 100% when you have a tenant in the house, right? Your tenant probably doesn't qualify to buy the house. You have to get them out, right? What's that process look like? Yeah. You're getting the tenants out of the house. What does that do to your income? Right? It's a lot of factors that go into it. But basically what I noticed is the 100% values that were on my spreadsheet, just take away 20% for sales price because it's not real. You can't sell it for that unless it's a perfect situation. Kick the tenant out of the house. Then you got to put money
Rehab
into it to fix it up. That's real life.
That's right.
Okay. So then let's say 3% is going to a realtor. 3% is going to the other realtor. Another 3% in closing cost. Right. This is what happens when you really have to sell. I didn't know any of this because I was just buying. I did not sell a property from 2017 to 2022.
Wow.
Everything I bought was Burr.
So let me play devil's advocate with you real quick, just because I want to know. You obviously have experiences that I have not endured, and this is great. Instead of selling, you refi, you get a 10-year note, and then you use that, right?
You couldn't refi if you didn't have 20% equity.
But that's what I'm saying. You restructure the debt. You got 500 units with 20% in imaginary money. I got what you're saying. But you move the 20 from some of these properties to this property. So now these are higher leverage, but these have no leverage or lower leverage. And I'm not saying that you're going to go out and keep investing with it. I'm just saying that it's emergency funds or whatever in times of turmoil or whatnot.
Yeah. The short answer to that is you need cash. I didn't have cash. Okay. So when you run low on cash, okay, I've already kind of answered this question. When you need the banks, when you need them, that's not the time to go ask for the money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd say the banks got harder over the past
Oh,
year.
absolutely.
And you need to show them, that you don't need the money, right? So if you're that customer going in there and you've got $1 million liquid, right, and you go ask for a loan, totally different experience than if you go in there and they see that you're overdraft on your checking account. Totally different experience. So I would say you need the cash. I think at some point when you run low on cash, you're not even thinking clearly anymore. You're not I'm telling you right now, I had a deal I did, and I'll share this and we'll cut this. But I had a deal I did where I sold 3 houses, okay, for $80,000, okay, to make payroll in 30 days. I was stressed out. Probably could have raised it some other way. Probably could have pulled it from personal funds, to be honest. But at the moment, I was told, hey, my girl in the office is like, hey, we're not gonna make payroll next month if you don't figure this out. And I don't like to get to the week of payroll, I can't do that.
Yep.
So I'm thinking 30 days out. And so I call an investor. He's like, I got $80K. I didn't owe anything on these properties, by the way. This was 3 properties. I didn't owe a dime. And he's like, I got $80K. I'll give it to you. And I sold him $240,000 worth of houses for $80K to make payroll. You're not always thinking clearly when you're stressed out.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And right now we're cool. We're in an unstressed environment.
Yeah.
But I wasn't.
But you had to work your way through that. You had to soldier your way through that.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
That's why it's good to have a good partner.
Oh, 100%.
Because I had to talk
what are you
him off
doing?
the ledge so many times.
I was like, sell it all. I'm done.
Like, hell no, you won't.
Let's figure this out, bro. Let's figure
I was
this
like,
out.
I could
Yeah.
sell everything right now and put $10 million in my pocket and sleep well at night. And I've had that thought, like, let's just sell it all. I'll put, and we, like you said, you know, cash gives you peace.
Most investors that I meet that have a bunch of rentals have that thought often, right? And we call other investors, like I'll call Richard. Like I text Richard all the time and be like, man, you can have this stuff. And then look, and he'll be like, well, okay, 70% off, you know. But, you know, usually he'll say something like, you know, you asked for these problems. Like this, you wanted this business. Like, I kid you not. Like the money in my Cash App right now is more money than I used to make in a year. That's insane.
Yep.
Right? So you need people to bounce stuff off of
Sure.
to keep you going, because this is a real,
Because
it's
we
a
all have the
stressful
same
business.
struggles.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It's all this.
To today's point a minute ago, one of the other downsides you get into in that exact scenario where you were is most of your loans are probably DSCR.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you had his portfolio was, let's say he was actually 11%, 80%, or 75% across his whole portfolio, if rates, when he did the original loan, said 4.25, right? So his rates were 4.25, let's say on $20 million, I think the example you used, whether it's accurate, now it's 130 grand in debt payments, right? If it now at 8.25, you know, if his debt payment's now 200 grand, there's a strong chance he can't refi. Right? There's a strong chance you'll go to the bank, hey, I'm gonna refi. Even if you've got good equity, they're gonna be like, dude, your DSCR would be 0.9 or 1.0 or 1.2.
It changed the game.
When you bought
Yeah.
most of those banks in 2020, 2019, 2018, banks only required 1.05 DSCR or 1.25. When the period he's talking about when they got scared, they went to 1.4, they went to 1.3, 1.5. I mean, they were really, especially small banks, they were protecting their ass. They were most investors in this room, if you had to go to your bank and you needed a 1.5, you're not refining a damn thing in your portfolio unless you're at 50% LTV or something like that. But in his exact scenario, I mean, there's a strong chance there was no refi happening from a DSCR perspective.
And it kind of shocks you, but like I haven't borrowed money from a bank in 2 years. Like I have post-traumatic stress. Like I borrow from private lenders.
Yeah.
Like that's what I do. I call my buddy and say, hey, let's fund this deal completely. And that's peace.
That is peace. Yes. The bank, yeah, and look, and to his point, I don't know if you guys know, but every loan document, if you read the fine print, they can call the loan anytime they want for any reason. You just
Any
ain't reading
reason.
it. And they can say,
They
hey,
can't lose it.
no, they can't. They can get in a bind and they can say, hey, Chris, need you to come give me $1.2 million because we need the money and we're calling your loan. And they don't even have to give you a reason. It's in the fine print, by the way.
They can call you and say, hey, I need you to pay $10,000 on this note.
Have you ever had
Right.
a line of credit lowered because of the market downturn? So what you were saying before, like I have a couple lines of credit, like maybe I have 100,000 into the deal, it appraised for like 300,000. I have a $220,000 line of credit. I don't even know if the property's worth 220. Like, have you ever, since you've had a note called on you, have either of you ever had like a $2 million line of credit that the bank called you up one day and said we're reducing that to 1.5 or 1.2 or like canceled it all together?
No, I haven't had a market drop that hard.
No.
Because I mean, maybe back in 2008 when the market dropped in some markets 50 to 70%, but we haven't had even with the slowdown the past 2 years. Yeah, it just ain't going up no more, but the prices have stayed pretty.
The prices are staying the same.
I mean, in your market,
Maybe,
how about
maybe
you?
like 10%.
They're just not going up anymore. Yeah. So, but in 2008, yes, I heard a lot of people that had lines of credit got reduced.
That happened to my parents.
Yeah.
In 2008, yeah. Now, the market really crashed big time in 2008.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll see that again because they were just giving loans out like candy. I don't think we'll see another crash like that again.
I don't think so.
Yeah. But this is good stuff, man. But see how genuine and real this guy is and the wisdom you can extract. So what are the lessons here, right?
Cash is key.
Cash is king, but make sure you have cash reserves. And look, he did a lot of things right too. Just like so Patty, like, what could we have done right, the past 7-8 years? I don't know that I would do anything differently because listen, we played a fun game the past 2000. You too. We made we built a balance sheet big time, and the equity that was just, I mean, we were getting our balance sheets were just expanding. It's like it was a drug, and it was fun, right?
2021, I think my equity went up $11 million in 1 year. I was like, equity, right?
I think a lot of times, and we talked about this earlier, with like as a real estate investor, you're always broke, right? That's
that's
you get money, you spend it on
You
something, right?
more
If you think
more
about
deals.
your exact same- so you got 300 units, right? Let's say that's the number you have left today. Like if you just stopped,
Mm-hmm.
just stop. Don't buy another thing. Don't sell another thing. Just stop and spend the next 15 years paying that off, bro. You're like you're top 0.6% of the U.S.
100%.
15 years from now, right? Like
Yep.
it's really easy, especially like in any room you're in. It's easy to compare yourself to somebody else who's in a different part of their journey than you, or at a different, whatever. It's easy to play that comparison game, but like you have 300 fucking doors. Like, dude, that's like that's so amazing.
I'm just getting started.
No, 100%.
You know.
Like and wherever you are, if you're at 5 doors, I mean, there's so many people that what is it? 70% of the Americans don't have $500 for an emergency.
That's right.
You have one rental door, you're crushing them. Like you're so good. Be proud, It is.
You're crushing the standard.
Like, and then the skills you learn from that, literally that one the one deal that you did, even if it went sideways, the learning you had from that one deal is worth however much you want it to be. It's worth $100 million, $500 million, however hard you want to push it, because you're just getting started. That one deal that went absolute shit, you learned all the things you need to learn to build the 500 years.
You won't do it again.
That's right.
Yeah.
You won't do it that same way again. Chris was saying this earlier, like, you hit the next cycle, and he's right. Like, this is the kind of stuff we tell each other about shit that happens.
Yep.
Right? We tell each other, like, it won't happen this way the next time. Like, you'll be ready for the next cycle. And he don't even know how pumped he made me when he said that. He was eating a steak,
Yeah. We're gonna crush it the next cycle.
Yeah.
Because you're coming out at a smarter experience to you.
Yeah.
And you just gotta learn. Listen, entrepreneurship is not who's the smartest, not who's got the biggest brains, it's who's got the biggest balls and who can hold the longest, and who's resilient. Resiliency is one of the top attributes as an entrepreneur.
Like that, I think, is like the theme of the night. Is like you always see entrepreneurs or gurus like in their high cycle,
Yeah.
right? And they want to talk about how they're in their high cycle, and you can be just like me. Nobody really talks about it is a grind, and by grind I mean like think about the physical motion of two hard things pushing against each other. Like we have had those last couple of years, like same conversations between the two of us. Like, but I'm the one that's like I throw everything up, like sell. I don't want it. Like he just knows, like let me have my freak out. Like I'm done. Seriously, this time I am done. Like blah blah blah. Stomp up the stairs. I come back down 20 minutes later, and he's like, "So what's going on with the property management company? What's going on here?" But that's the thing. It's like it is a grind, and anyone who tells you it's not a grind is lying. Because it's not easy. But if it was easy, then everybody would do it, right?
And that is the price you got to pay to become wealthy. You heard what she just said? That's the price that you become to be wealthy. The stress.
You work like people won't, so you can live like people can't.
Yep.
It's hard. It's really hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. But just like being a parent, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done as well. Like it's very difficult, but
Two things I want to share. Like something we're really not talking about though, that we probably should talk about is we really shouldn't be comparing ourselves to other people's journey, other people's stage. Troy, you said, "Hey, I'm the oldest person here." Other people, like, you need to be comparing yourself to yourself, right? And when I look back and do that, like, y'all really don't know where I come from, like the house I grew up in. Like, the best thing I had was a loving dad and a loving mom who made sure that I came in before the street lights went off. But that's what we had, right? And so my dad calls me every morning, and he just thinks what I'm doing is like from another planet. Like that's where I come from, right? But if you think about your own story, where you are, like that's who you compare yourself to. Like compare yourself to that, because your progress is what's going to motivate you. Like, man, look at where I came from.
Something that scares me, because I have the same conversations with my friends, of course, on different levels. and I'm hearing the conversations, but do you ever have that feeling? I know looking at your past, you say, yeah, you came a long way, but do you ever get that feeling that you have arrived? Or is it always like pushing the bar, like now that you're repositioning yourself in a cash-heavy position, you're trying to get peace, but then you're like, you just said 300 doors and you're still just getting started.
The goalpost always.
So like
Yeah,
the
the goalpost
goalpost
moves.
always moving,
Yeah.
so you really never do arrive because you're constantly
The chase is the
Yeah.
destination.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say
chase
that.
is the destination.
And
There
it's-
is-
and
we
it's-
never
and
arrive.
it's- And it's fun.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun.
Chris lives off of deals, okay?
Yeah, we live off of deals.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll buy a deal today. Or at least be
We'll
I'll
still
buy
be
one
doing
today.
deals.
Yeah.
We'll trade
I'm in.
with the nurse.
Yeah. But he,
The peace come from like, I guess, the hard hits that make you operate smoother, I guess.
I think I just value different things now.
yeah.
Like, my darkest days, the people who call you, like those relationships become way more important because you find out who your friends really are. Like you find out who's riding with you because they're your people and who was riding with you just because things were good. So I think relationships become way more important. Obviously your health, extremely important that you have your family relationships.
Yeah.
So I just value different things. Like people ask me how many doors do I have no idea, but now it's not because I'm buying so many, it's because that's kind of not important. Cash helps, but it's a tool to have experiences. We rented a cabin this past weekend, and my wife went fishing with me. That's the sexiest thing she could do. That is more valuable to me than any door count or any amount, but it takes cash flow to do that. So
Don't get caught up in the ego of who's got more doors. I did a video about counting all my cabinet doors. That's the guru world, dude.
that's the truth.
It's all bullshit.
Yeah, and I mean, in the syndicators, to me, that's like the focus. It's
Yeah.
like,
You got 2% of it though.
yeah, but it's like wrong thing.
Yep. Yep. Give it up for John.
Hey, thanks, man.